Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Dr. Jason Bolton, Vice President of Community Partnerships for the Help Group, and I'll be moderating today's webinar in conversation with Rabbi Sherre Hirsch, Finding Perspective During Uncertain Times for Professionals and Parents of Young People with Special Needs. Many of you submitted questions when you registered for the webinar, and we'll be answering a lot of those today. And also, as some of you have already taken advantage of, we've enabled the chat function so that you may pose additional questions during the event. The chat is only visible to the webinar staff who are monitoring it. So if you've been chatting and you're not seeing it, or you're not seeing that other people are chatting, that's because we're the only ones who are seeing it. Let me just answer a few things I see already. Yes, everyone is muted. Well, I saw something else here I wanted to clarify as well. Yes, we can't see you and you're muted. Okay, so so you're safe. You can chat questions during the event as well. I have collected some of the questions from registration, but if you have questions as it comes up, please don't hesitate, and we will be monitoring the chat as well. Before I introduce our guest speaker, let me tell you a little bit about the Help Group. Founded in 1975, the Help Group serves children and adolescents and young adults with special needs related to autism spectrum disorder, learning disabilities, ADHD, developmental delays, abuse, and emotional challenges. The Help Group's 9 specialized day schools offer pre-K through high school programs for more than 1,400 students. We have a broad range of mental health and therapy services and residential programs with a reach of more than 6,000 children and families each year. And recently, the Help Group launched programs to serve the LGBTQ+ community. With more than 850 staff members, the Help Group's state-of-the-art schools and programs are located on 7 campuses in the Los Angeles area and in Orange County. The Help Group is widely regarded for its high standards of excellence and unique scope and breadth of services. Through our public awareness and outreach programs, university partnerships, applied research, graduate and postgraduate professional training programs, conferences and seminars, parent education programs, publications, and public policy efforts, the Help Group touches the lives of children with special needs and their families throughout the United States and in other parts of the world. At the heart of our efforts is our commitment to helping young people fulfill their potential to lead positive, productive, and rewarding lives. I now have the pleasure to introduce you to this morning's speaker, Rabbi Sherre Hirsch. Rabbi Sherre Hirsch is the Chief Innovation Officer for American Jewish University. She made headlines as the first female rabbi at Sinai Temple, the largest conservative congregation on the West Coast. She served as Senior Rabbinic Scholar at Hillel International, where she created and developed Hillel, an initiative for Hillels worldwide to become the recognized address for preventative mental health. A thought leader on spirituality and religion, Rabbi Hirsch has appeared on the Today Show, ABC News, Extra, and PBS, among other outlets, and has been a contributor to Time.com, Oprah Magazine, The Jewish Journal, The Hollywood Journal, and more. She is the author of Thresholds, How to Live Fearlessly and Regret-Free, featured in Hot Type and Vanity Fair, and We Plan, God Laughs, What to Do When Life Hits You Over the Head, which is recognized on Amazon's top 100 list. Rabbi Hirsch was ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Welcome, Sherre, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
We're so happy. I will say, after reading that, I'm a little bit nervous that you've been on the Today Show and Extra, because I'm not sure that I'm a Savannah Guthrie or Billy Bush.
Well, you're in good stead because they never interviewed me. I was interviewed by Matt Lauer and Katie Couric and Ann Curry, all the previous.
Okay. Well, I think I can fill those shoes. All right, good.
Yes, so you're in good stead.
So today I just want to start by asking some questions that we have, and then, as you know, we're going to move on to some questions that people submitted during the registration process, and other questions that people have. One of the first things I saw when I was looking at the registrants was someone saying, I just want to listen. I just want to hear tips and advice, and it'll be nice to hear from someone who understands what all of us parents with special needs kiddos are dealing with during distance learning, and to just feel seen. And that part really stood out for me, was a parent saying, I just want to feel seen.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's very isolating, this whole pandemic. And so we feel less seen more than ever. And what I love is that conversations like we're having today are letting people have a window into each other's lives, right? We're not only seeing that we're struggling together, but we're also seeing like the kids come in the middle and the dog jump on you. And, you know, I'm a rabbi, I'm a professional. This is what I do for a living. And I'm a mother of a special needs child, actually now too. And so I'm living it, right? So I can't guarantee you that a kid's not going to come in at any moment or a dog's not going to bark, but I think there's a real humanity in that. And I also think it gives us a chance to really recognize each other as unmasked and unveiled in this moment.
I know we are all coming to this, thinking about our own families, during this time. I know as I was like you, as I was preparing for this, I have 3 kids at home. They're all currently on distance learning, meaning they're all using the Wi-Fi right as I'm using the Wi-Fi. I'm concerned that I'll get cut out at any given time. There are 2 dogs running around down here that are going to bark at the same time. So I know we are all coming from this perspective, and that's why this is such an exciting time to have this talk.
I think one of the most important takeaways, Jason, and I don't want to gloss over it, is that we are in it together more than ever. Often when we have a special needs child, we feel very much like the rest of the world is going on, like everybody else is getting it and I'm not. But this moment really teaches us that everybody's struggling. And so rather than being in judgment, to take this as an opportunity to say like, oh, I'm one of many, and just to feel like a part of something, I think is Absolutely. A really important takeaway. If that's all you take away today, I think that's so important that you are not alone.
Absolutely. Well, I've had the privilege of hearing you speak a couple of times before, Sherre, and I'm inspired by your personal story, and I think it makes you uniquely prepared to speak to this moment in time. You alluded to it a minute ago a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about that story and how it informs the work you do and your view of our current situation.
So I never thought of myself as an advocate for special needs, and I never imagined I'd have a child that was anything but similar to what I imagine children do. They go to preschool, they go to school, they go to college. Like I just had, when you're getting pregnant, you think, I'm just going to have a regular child. You don't think about all the other things. And we had Emmett, which is my firstborn biological child. And I say that very clearly because later on we take on another child who at 15 becomes our 5th child, who, as I like to say to people, Emmett was at the time what I thought would implode us. Like I could not imagine parenting a child that was so dysregulated, so difficult. There was no placement for him. It was so challenging. And I say he's the greatest miracle of my life today, right? Because my one child, we have 4 children biologically. One child brought us a lizard, one child brought us a dog, and Emmett brought us another child. And so we now have 5 children, 2 with special needs, Joseph and Emmett. And it really brought me to a new awareness because I realized that every child was their own world. It says in the Talmud, which is our Jewish tradition, that each person is an entire world. And I needed to understand Emmett's world. And so it's been a journey. And now at 18, he's literally God's greatest gift that he gave me. And I don't want to say, I don't want to brag about the help group. I hate when people do that, but I just have to say, like, the help group was instrumental in taking us on this journey. And so I not only approach it from a professional level, but a very personal level as well.
And I didn't mean to tee you up to
no, I didn't feel that at all.
Make a commercial for the help group.
But I would just add too that, you know, if someone said to me 6 years ago that we would voluntarily take in another child with special needs and do it with love and joy and excitement, a 15-year-old teenager, I would have said, you're crazy. And yet that's what we did, because we've come to see this as an incredible blessing in our life. So,
well, we are proud that we have been a part of Emmett's and Joseph's journey. I know there's many other aspects to it, but we certainly are proud to have been a piece of that. And I love hearing you talk about that and how that informs what you do. We were talking a little bit, you know, I was talking a little bit about how hectic everything is, just, you know, preparing every day. And I think there's a lot of questions like, is this normal? And what is normal? And we hear this term new normal. Is there a new normal now? Where do you think we are right now?
So I think it's really hard to just be in this moment. Either we're in one camp, which is like, I want things to return to what they were, or we're in the other camp. It's like, what's it going to look like? And I'm waiting for that moment. And I think it's really hard to get grounded at this very moment and to recognize that this in itself is where we're at. And we always talk about being present, but it's even harder to be present because there's so many unknowns. And it's so chaotic every day, right? It's not, every day is not, oh, here's what happens. It's like every day is new information, new world information, new information with your children. I mean, I'm just laughing because one of our kids who's, quote, neurotypical, right? I love that phrasing, is he tells me yesterday, I'm done with digital. I'm like, what does that mean? You're done for good? You're done for your life? He's like, I'm just done with it, right? So there's no boundaries. And so it really forces us to get very grounded in today and not looking at what will be and where we come from and when it will go back, but rather to say, okay, how can I just be in this day and to really take care of myself in this moment? Because if I don't take care of me, the whole thing's going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. The whole thing. Not that everything hinges on me, but I do know as a mother of special needs child that a lot does, right? My ability to stay grounded, to stay centered, really affects the mood of the household. And so I have a lot of tools and tricks on how to do that. Well,
maybe that's where we go. I know in hearing you talk before and reading some of what you've written, I love hearing you talk about the B+ parent, which I think is probably a way that, where you can take some pressure off yourself and be okay, right? But tell us a little about what do you mean when you say because a B+, when I got a B+, my parents weren't particularly happy.
No, neither were mine. My parents were always, and I was raised to be an A student. And there were times I brought in a B+, and my parents would say, why didn't you get an A, right? And I started to realize as a parent that being an A was actually not great for my child nor for me. Because what I was constantly doing for Emmett was setting up the standard that was unachievable on a consistent basis. There are peaks, moments when you have an A day. But most of the time, you travel between a B, a B-, a B+. And so if you can strive for a B+, that's a very different orientation in the world. And once Emmett said to me something that I will never forget. I said, do you feel like we demand of you to be this and to be that? He goes, no, but you model for it. You're so driven and you're so always exacting. He's like, couldn't you just chill out? One day skip brushing your teeth, because brushing teeth on a regular basis was so hard for him in the beginning. And he's like, what if one day you skipped it? And I thought to myself, we're constantly modeling perfectionism. What if I modeled being a B+? And so I skipped brushing my teeth for a day. Yes, I did. I skipped it. It was disgusting. But what it did is it modeled for them that the goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to be self-accepting and forgiving. And when I modeled that for myself, he could take that in as well. And I see it all over the place. When I demand from my employees, A, I get a lot of grumbles and I'm not good enough and a lot of low self-esteem, when I model for them, I want to see a B plus. Then I watch them surpass it, but also feel a lot of self-pride and self-esteem, which is what we want for our children and for ourselves.
How might that look? Maybe we have a good idea of how that looks on an everyday basis, but how might that look during this pandemic? Is it different? Are there different things we're thinking about?
Sure. Right, like this idea. I think a lot of struggles, and I hear it a lot at being a professional, is in this pandemic we feel like now that we can have dinner together as a family, we should have it every single night, and so there's parents putting a lot of pressure on themselves with these standards. Like, now that we have the time, we should be making our food. Now that we, suddenly we have all these new jobs. And as a parent of a special need child, like just getting through the day is the job, right? Just getting through at the end of the day without wanting to collapse, like that is the job. So I think one of the things I tell people is not to add extraneous pressures right now, not to suddenly demand, oh, we always had dinner as a family together once a week. Suddenly now we have to have it every day. And I love Emmett because he's the truth teller. He said to us, in the beginning, I wanted to have dinner every night because we could. And he said, Mom, really? He said, doing that, we're going to run out of things today by Shabbat, right? Like he was like, just keep it at normal pace. So don't try to achieve more or to go to some new goals right now. This is not the time for that. This is the time to feel comfortable in status quo and to model that you're enough, right? So that means not trying to, kill yourself to work out because so you gained a few pounds. Okay, so you ate a little more, whatever that means. Like, so one night order pizza, right? I don't know if you let food deliver into your home, but to give yourself a break is a huge messaging of this moment. And I hear it from all kinds of professionals, to really give yourself a break.
And I think I want to go back to that here in a second, about giving yourself a break and self-care. Let's make sure we get back to that. But one of the things that I'm thinking about here is the pressure on families whose children, especially kids who are in special education programs, whose children have made gains. They've seen it happen. They've seen a 4-year-old develop language and develop some social skills over the past couple of years, and now they don't see that progression as much. Some kids are doing quite well, but there's many who are struggling at this point, and the pressure on parents right now. I know from my own, again, neurotypical kids that I worry about this, and I can only imagine how much more it affects parents of kids with special needs.
Well, I think there's
how much pressure should they be putting on themselves about?
Well, I think there's a danger, Jason, of future tripping, right? If they're not doing the same markers that they were doing a year ago because they're on digital, how's that going to affect what the future holds? It's a real danger of like the slippery slope of like, last year at this time, they were learning this and this. That means this is not going to happen. This means not. And it's important not to storytell. It's not really important not to get ahead of yourself. It's like, for this moment, they're not doing it. And I'm going to try and not compare it to a previous moment. And I'm going to try and not to tell a story about what that means or what are all the ramifications. And rather to be like, great, they have a new skill or they don't have a new skill. It doesn't mean that they're on a linear road in which they're advancing or they're retreating. Rather, they're just being. And I actually think there's a major restart in the world right now that's forcing us all to reassess how to stop doing and start being. And so to get out of the story, this means that, right? To get out of the story is we're in a worldwide pandemic. Everybody is struggling, right? Everybody. And then if you already had struggles in your home, they're completely amplified. So what can you do to de-escalate them? And what can you do to give yourself a break and model that for your children? And I'm not saying like that means get in your bed and stay in bed all day. I'm just saying to stop the echo chamber of I should have done more. This is going to mean this. They're not going to do that. That that echo chamber of I'm not enough and this isn't good enough, all that is very detrimental in this moment.
And earlier you slid the term in self-forgiveness, and I'll admit that's kind of a novel term for me. So what does self-forgiveness look like? What exactly is it that you mean when you say that?
Well, it means accepting this moment as it is, and that you are a B plus. You're not a D, and you may not be an A. You are a B plus, which means that it's okay if you need to say to your child, I need to go in my bedroom for an hour and just relax, and turn to your spouse or your partner or a friend and say, ask for help. Self-forgiveness is really about asking for help. I cannot do this alone. I need help. And I'm going to forgive myself for not being the superwoman or super person that I think I'm supposed to be. I also think it's showing your children your humanity. Like, there's been a lot of messy in my house, a lot of messy during this time, right? Things look messier. I've lost my temper. One day I really lost it, and I don't typically lose it. And my children kept bringing it up to me for like, it happened right after COVID began. And then for like 3 months, they were like, remember that time you lost it? Remember that time you lost it? Finally, I said to them, yes, I remember. I don't need to be reminded, but it's also okay that I lost it because it's been really hard. And then they stopped bringing it up. And it's given them permission to lose it, which is actually okay, right? That's a very healthy experience, because this is a time that you kind of lose it a little bit.
This seems really basic, but these are really hard times, right? I mean, I feel like we've been in it a while now, and it's easy maybe to gloss over where we've been since March, but none of us have done this before. So
there's definitely been a trajectory that's changed, right? Which was, in the beginning, there was all this excitement, not the excitement of the pandemic, but there was memes and there was funny. When was the last time you got a funny meme? And in the beginning, we got it nonstop. Then there was this pre-election time where really people got really amplified in anxiety. And now there seems to be a reprieve in some respects. But I think there's a bit of a roller coaster that we're on. I made a hand movement of a roller coaster. And the roller coaster, I don't know about you, but I hate roller coasters. They make me throw up. Like, I have no desire. I'm sorry, Disneyland Magic Mountain, it's a bad advertisement, but I hate them because, and having a child with special needs is already living in a roller coaster. It's like permanently living on a roller coaster. So then add a pandemic and you're on a roller coaster that you never even wanted, on top of the roller coaster that you never expected. So to really be like, okay, today I woke up and I'm having a harder time. I'm going to have to change my schedule. I'm going to have to give myself a little bit of ease. I'm going to give myself a moment to get on a webinar, whatever it is, to get the support you need, because we need it more than ever.
I think I really hear, that we all need to recognize how hard this is, and that we just, your terms, embrace imperfection and messiness. That we have to pay attention to that, and it's not easy. You can go days without doing it, right? But you need to come back to that at least periodically to continue to do what's best for all of us.
And I don't necessarily want to bring God into this, because God can be anything that you imagine. There's, 88 names for God in the Bible, and there's only 500 words used over and over again. So whatever you think of something greater than yourself, I think there's a moment here to say, like, how am I living my life? And I've been working so hard and doing. And I know for me, I'm always out front advocating for Emmett. I'm always out front trying. And it's like, this moment is a question of, and a lot of what Emmett said to me is this year, especially, is like, I got this, Mom. You can back off. Now he's getting older, but part of it is he's letting me know in this major reset, he's also thinking about my role and how much I'm in his life. And I think that's a conversation to have with your special needs child, if you can. Not everybody has children they can be verbal with, but to what degree am I stepping forward and preventing them from stepping forward. And maybe this is a moment to step back in order to let them step forward. And it's okay if it's really messy. It's really okay.
And you just described what you might say is a milestone that Emmett can do that with you now, right?
For sure.
And I think I've heard you say before that, we always need to celebrate milestones, but maybe in this particular time, to find those miracles and celebrate milestones is more important than ever.
So I was really guilty of setting milestones that were unachievable with my child. And so I would have, lists around the house of what he had to check off. And very early on, I learned that my milestones were completely ridiculous and that I had to celebrate much, much more subtle milestones. And I think in this moment, like you said, Jason, you have to double down on celebrating those milestones. Like, he got out of bed. That's a huge milestone. Huge, right? Like I used to have lists like brush your teeth, get dressed. I mean, it was like ridiculous how many things I had for a non-neurotypical kid. And now to really double down on like, you know what? We sat on the sofa and cuddled for 10 minutes and had an amazing experience. To acknowledge that that's enough for the day, right? That is enough. I cannot stress that more in this moment, that you can't set the same goalpost that you had before and think that they're achievable. It's not. The world is not working in that way. Mm-hmm. By the way, there's no goalpost in the world. So why would you have internal goalposts that don't even level up with the larger world?
And isn't this a time, however, by celebrating milestones and finding the positives in what we do encounter on a day-to-day basis, isn't this actually a pretty opportune time to develop resilience? And folks talk about grit a lot these days. Isn't this like a perfect time to do that?
Like, I love when all the scholars talk about that. Like, this is your moment and you can develop resilience. I don't need to develop resilience because I hate that word. Not that I don't think resilience and grit is so important, but the amount it takes to parent a child of special needs, like, it's
You've been there, right?
Yeah. So it's like, you're telling me this is your moment to learn. This is your moment to like develop it. It's like, I don't need more development in that area. Like, I'd rather be out at the pool, having pina colada. Like,
I'm all full with grit.
Yeah. Like, I'm good with grit. So I think for me, what I say to myself is like, this is a moment to reassess the kind of parent I want to be, right? Is this the parenting that I've been doing, and so it's become habitualized, or is this intentionally the kind of parent I want to be in this moment? And one of the kind of things that I think a lot about in this moment is I want to be a much more hugging parent. In my previous life, we used to run around to carpool, this, that, whatever. Now, every morning in that carpool time, I grab one of my kids and I hug them. They push me back. They don't like it. They're like, why are you touching me? Especially my teenagers. But I want to be a parent that hugs more and has more tactile connection to my children and less verbal demands. So to me, that's a milestone, that I hug them in the morning in a way that's very intentional, as opposed to, and I think to hold on to those are much more subtle. And I actually think they're much more nourishing to get through the day. Because I know a hug from Eden, even if it wasn't reciprocated, even if it's me just like a bear hugging her, will sustain me when other things don't go so smoothly, and plenty is not going smoothly.
I love that as a reframe from having these very specific goals that we have to achieve to, how can we just make our family lives more full and our relationship with our children more close or whatever. That's a nice reframe. Want to get to some questions from the community. They were quite thoughtful in registering. Some of them are hit some of the topics that we've touched, but maybe in a little bit of different angle. So let me start, and I'm not going to use names about who submitted them, but these came through when folks did registration. So the first one is, how do you maintain your own center when all around you people seem to be losing theirs?
I love that question because that is a daily task. There is the prescribed actions that you take, right? You get up a little bit earlier in the morning, you do something about self-care, whether it's a walk or meditate, or even just drink a cup of tea quietly, right? But what happens to me is I do all that in the morning, and then by 4 o'clock, I'm ready to like take someone down. And so what I tell people is like, that's intentionally plan in your day from 4 to 4:30 or whatever that witching hour is. And you remember when your kids had the witching hour, whatever that witching hour is, to re-engage all those self-care tools. Whether it's, I'm going to meditate for a minute. It takes 90 seconds to change the psychology of the brain. Whether it's like, I'm just going to walk around the block. Whether I'm just going to pet the dog. A big thing I've been having my nanny do is bring her dog, who's much warmer and friendlier than our dog. And I just put her in my lap and pet her for 5 minutes, right? Those set off a reminder to reorient, because what happens during the day, and if you're like me, you're on Zoom all day, is you're absorbing everybody's anxiety. And I don't know about you, but as a parent of special needs, I'm sensitive. And it's my superpower. But taking in everybody's anxiety every day and feeling all that is really hard. So to literally put alarms and notes in your calendar, 8 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, I'm going to take these 5-minute reorient breaks where I literally release everybody else's anxiety. And one of my favorites is I breathe in what I need most and I breathe out what I don't. So I breathe in calm and I breathe out anxiety. And sometimes I even put someone's name to the anxiety. I was like, that meeting was full of this anxiety. Now I'm just going to breathe them out. But to really intentionally put those markers in your day, especially because the time has been very much rearranged in this moment. So time is very complicated. So to construct your own rituals and your own set times to endeavor to those rituals.
And that's self-care, right? That's
for sure. And by the way, I just want to say, Jason, self-care is not selfish, and it can feel like it in this moment because there's an unlimited list of things to do. And what I remind all my clients, and when I talk about the book, when we talk about Be Playing God Laughs, when you take care of yourself, you're modeling for your children the need for them to take care of themselves. And if there's one thing that I want for my children is to know how to take care of themselves, no matter the situation, whether it's in terms of safety or in their own lives. So you're really doing them a service. You're giving them the tools and the modeling. And by the way, they're watching much more what we're doing than what we're saying, as we all know.
I'm glad we're recording this because I need that last question on a loop, and I can play it every night because we're all caretakers, and I think we all feel like it's selfish when we turn it towards ourselves. And I think to be reminded that that old thing about you have to put on your oxygen mask before you can put it on your child beside you on an airplane. I think we need constantly to be reminded about that we need to take care of ourselves to care for others.
But if you think about it as it's a gift that you're giving others, as opposed to you're doing it to take care of yourself so you can better be there for them, to think about it, this is a gift you're giving to them to show them how they can be there for themselves. That's a different perspective and a different take. And I think that for someone like me who's a caretaker, it's hard for me to rationalize it. But if I rationalize it, it's giving them tools to be the kind of self-caretakers that I want them to become, then it feels like much more legitimate.
Agreed. I like it. So here's another. These are really great. So how does a parent balance her own work with supporting her children?
So there's a lot of different understandings of what work is, right? There's parents that work in the home, which is really hard. There's parents that work outside the home. And then there's this third category that we're now all in, which is that we're working in the home and outside the home at the same time, all the time, right? And so I think one of the things that's been interesting is that I like people to see that I've got it all together, right? We always want people to consume us in a way that makes us look like we're all together. Nobody posts on Facebook, been married 18 years, each day's been a trial and a tribulation, but we're still here doing it, right? They post 18 wonderful years of happiness and bliss. Well, if you've been married for 18 years, you know that's not what it is. Right? Like you just know, because that's not what the nature of a relationship is. So one of the things I say is to recognize that you can unveil yourself and unmask yourself. And in doing so, you're giving a gift to other people. So it's okay if the kid walks in right now. It's okay if the dog barks, and to realize that, you know, work is not going to be 100% every day. It just can't be. You can't be good at all things all the time. But you're going to now do this third category, which is work, family, home, mess. And you're going to be brave and courageous in sharing that with others. The other day I was in a meeting and a father had his daughter jump on the meeting, and she was, you know, wanting a bagel and she was crying and this and that, whatever. And I saw a real act of humanity. Another colleague of mine said, sounds like you need to go get your daughter a bagel, and put on her sneakers to take her for a walk, and excused him from the meeting. I mean, to show those moments of humanity was far more important than anything else that happened in that meeting. And we have to. Because we're in this case of just mess. I mean, my kids are coming in, it's just chaos, you know?
That reminds me of a story that I heard from you a couple of days ago, where you were at a Starbucks, I think, and you were saying that because there's not as many people out in the world, that when parents are having difficulties with their children, it's sort of amplified, and the pressure that puts on parents. Tell that story. I thought that was interesting. So
before, when everybody was out and about, and Emmett, or I see a parent with a child with special needs, would act out, there was a ton of people, and there was some embarrassment around it, or shame, or whatever, all the feelings that came around. But there was a ton of people, and it was in a sea of cacophony of other things going on in the world. Now you go out with your child, and you might be the only other person with someone else in the Starbucks, and they're seeing you completely naked. Your kid's acting out, and there's no other distractions, no other noises, no other nothing. And the other day I was in a Starbucks, and I saw a woman, like, I literally felt like she felt like her clothes, she was naked, because this kid was acting out, and you could see that she didn't have anything to distract her. And rather than sitting there in judgment, which I think a lot of people do, I walked over to her and I said, how can I help you? What can I get you and your son for breakfast this morning? And I thought she was going to cry, because in a moment of such, what she saw as shame and nakedness, I saw as a moment for an embrace. And I think that's our moment to elevate each other and embrace each other, which is sort of the theme of my COVID years, is how can we embrace and elevate one another? That's my 2020 mantra.
I think that's a fantastic example. Inspired me to be looking for those kind of opportunities, for sure.
Right, because we're very naked in the world now, very naked. People are seeing how vulnerable we are, how scared we are, how fearful we are. And rather than try to shield it, to say to someone, I feel that too. How can I help you in this moment? How can I serve you? Because there's a lot of judgment. You're wearing a mask. You're not wearing a mask. Why are you here? I mean, the judgment has amplified. So our job is to decrease the judgment.
So here's an interesting question. I might have to interpret a little bit. So it says, what have you found are the best ways to discuss current historical events? So current historical, I'm thinking they just mean the period of time that we're in. So what have you found are the best ways to discuss current events with young children or children with special needs in such a way that's developmentally appropriate and also fosters a sense of resilience in the child?
So I love that question, and thank you for asking that, because I think the tendency is, because we're anxious and unsure and scared, they already feel that heavily, right? Especially our special needs children really feel our feelings, or at least mine does. What I always start with is my job is to help you keep yourself safe. Notice I didn't say my job is to keep you safe, because that's not my job. My job is to give you the skills to teach you how to keep yourself safe. And I want to let you know is we are learning new skills in this moment. So let's talk about the skills that make you feel safe, rather than getting into the nitty gritty of, what's out there and what's going on. I mean, the other day my son said, why is all of Beverly Hills boarded up and when are they going to take it down? And to answer that with honesty, but age appropriateness, but also with the goal of how do you keep yourself safe? In our house, we don't need at this moment to board ourselves up. We don't feel it's necessary to keep ourselves safe. In some of these businesses, in order to keep themselves and their property safe, they've decided to do this temporarily, and they'll let us know when they're taking it down. And the reason I say it like that is you start with reassurance. And it's not a false reassurance. It's not everything's going to be okay. Don't you worry about it, because we don't know. But what it's saying is for us, what we need is this. And for them, that's what they need. And I think by framing in that way, you're giving reassurance that you have the ability to learn how to be safe in the world, even when the world does not feel safe. And the world doesn't feel safe. And when I say to my children, especially, and to clients, this is a very scary time, what I find is it amplifies their anxiety. When I say, I'm feeling scared and I'm taking actions to address those fears, it kind of takes it to a different level. So the phraseology is really important.
That you said if you had one thing to take away earlier, add this to your toolbox, folks. I think that is very important. There's a significant difference between saying these are scary times and I'm scared. Here's what we're going to do to take care of that. That's an empowering message that can make a big difference.
Right. And here are the tools and here are the tricks and here are the things that we're doing to keep ourselves safe. To constantly reiterate, here's the actions we're taking, as opposed to these are scary times. These are uncertain times. I mean, when I hear that, even as I say it, my heart goes up like this. It's like, yes, that is true, but we are taking actions. Today, I'm taking an action by sitting on a meeting with the help group to talk about how we share these feelings and what we do about it, right? And often at the dinner table, which we don't do every night, I just want to be very clear.
B+.
Right. When I say that, what did you do today that made you feel secure, fulfilled, happy, content in the world, right? As opposed to what'd you do at school today, right? And, what was one thing you did on digital classroom that made you feel like you had a superpower? To frame it where we empower each other rather than engender more fear. But be age appropriate. A 2-year-old, you don't say that. And an 18-year-old, you don't say that.
Right. So this next question segues off that beautifully. I didn't plan it that way, but because it's sort of an example. And they ask, this is interesting. I know I've done this before. Is offering comparisons to worse circumstances an effective way to build perspective in young adults?
So I have very strong.
It could be worse.
Right. I have very strong opinions about this. It has been shown in many studies, and I wish I could articulate them now, that comparing creates despairing. Meaning, well, kids are starving in Africa. It could be worse. What happens it doesn't validate your own feelings. It makes you delegitimized. And when you say to someone, you should do that because it could be worse, what you're saying is what you're feeling is not legitimate. And nobody wants to feel that their feelings, you can have a lot of sadness because your dog died, and you can have sadness because your father died, and both of them are legitimate. That doesn't mean the sadness has the same intensity for each person, but it could. So I am a big advocate of no comparing. You should be grateful. Make a grateful list. You should do this. Anytime the word should is in there, I think should is a bad word. It's a much more bad word in our house than most bad words. It's that mentality just delegitimizes. To say to someone, I hear they're struggling and I hear you're struggling, that makes me sad, but I hear your struggle is really painful. And I say that a lot because people would say to us with Emmett, especially when he was in the depths of dysregulation and there was no school placement for him, and we did find a placement with STEM 3 and that's all great, but along the route it was very hard. And people would say to me, I don't think it could be worse, or it could be worse, you could not live in Los Angeles. And every time what I heard was, don't think what you're thinking. I've got to figure it out for you. Yeah. To be with people in their discomfort and to actually sit with their discomfort and not try to fix it, especially our children, trying to fix it is comparing, not trying to fix it and just sitting with people is such a healing tool and scientifically more successful for humans.
So this parent who's asking about this and saying, I'm struggling because I'm trying to build resilience in this time with my son or my daughter. And so I'm thinking that I should compare it to worse things. What's their alternative? How should they address that?
Right. Part of that is the desire to put things in perspective. And what a lot of our children don't have is perspective. They're very literal. Right? My favorite story is, well, not my favorite, but one of many is when Emmett was very young, he read the paper before we woke up and he ran in and woke us up and said, get up, there's a war in Afghanistan and you're a rabbi and you're a doctor and you have to go fix it now, right? Like he was so literal. It was like, there was a war and that's what we do. So yes. I think part of what the challenge is you're not trying to make them, I'm trying to say this you're not trying to fix it for them. I can't stress that enough. What you're trying to is empathize with them. And so by giving them, well, it's worse here. And you can say to children, and I think it's helpful, is like, what does this feel analogous to? So that the intensity of the feelings are correct. Does this feel like when you were struggling at school to be accepted? Did this feel like the day that you got rejected or kicked out of school? Whatever it is, to give them anecdotal experiences from their own life that then they can measure it against. But to measure it against other people just is really painful. Perfect.
I like that. We honestly may have time for like 2 more questions, Sherre. So I'm looking for what might be a little different here. This is interesting. This gets into blaming here. So how can I help? I think this may be a teacher writing this. How can I help my special ed students understand that the pandemic and quarantine and not being able to go back to their old normal is not anybody's fault? I started to see more and more power struggling between parents and students, and I don't always know how to help them.
So parents and children are struggling. Adult parents are struggling more with their parents than they ever have. So senior parents are struggling with their adult children, which is exacerbating adult children struggling with, there's a lot of power struggling because the instinct is if we can blame someone or something, then I don't have to be attached to it. And what's hard about this one is the virus is a minuscule millimeter, whatever it is, that's taken over our lives. And so there's no one to identifiably blame. And you see adults left and right blaming it's the politics, it's this, it's that. So it's really easy to go there. And what I tell people, this is a very theological question. There are things in this world that are out of our control, way more things than we want to acknowledge. And we have no idea why they happen. Right? There are quirks in nature. We don't know why we can scientifically know why a volcano or erupts or this or that, but there are things that happen without any control. And this is a moment of powerlessness, that we can acknowledge that we are not the end all be all. There's a great teaching in Judaism that in one hand we carry a message that we are but dust and ashes. And in the other hand, we carry this message that we are the greatest and we are the most important thing in the world. And that we're supposed to walk through life with both hands open, meaning to walk through life that we are powerless over many things and we are just but dust and ashes. And at the same time, our life is important and we need to take care of ourselves and our bodies and our health and our children at the utmost. And to walk with that two in balance every day, which is a very hard thing. Because some days we feel really powerless and some days we feel really in control. And so if we hit the mark once every 365 days a year, I figure that's a job well done.
And we're doing that in the context of, at least in the media, seeing a lot of fault, seeing a lot of blame about why we're in this situation that we're in, whether it's the genesis of the virus or whether it's been about the response to the virus. There's a lot of finger pointing. So I can imagine it's hard to be with students and try to do what you are saying right there against this backdrop of so much.
The media is the media. And so I think it's really important to say, to just acknowledge the media does a lot of finger pointing. People, the instinct when we feel powerless is to blame. So just to name that for our children is very powerful. Like I do a lot of naming, like, God, wouldn't it be great if we could just blame this all on X or Y, and my kids would be like, that's what they did. I'm like, but wouldn't it be great? Because then if we got rid of them, the whole thing would be solved. But you and I know it wouldn't be solved. Right. So to kind of make it a little bit of a game and to be curious, do you think that they are fully in charge of this? Right? Is this why this happened? I mean, I've heard my kid came home the other day and said something. One of my kids said, like, my youngest one said, if China caused this, then if we eliminate China, then we would be done with it. I was like, really? Do you think that's how it will work? Right. And then we started to talk through it and he was like, God, that's silly. Right? Like, that's the cause, not the problem. Right?
Exactly. Okay, we've got time for one more question. I think it kind of brings us a little bit full circle. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this one and then we'll wrap it up. But as a parent, what things can I just give up the fight on? And what things should I really hold the line on during these times? It seems like I could fight with them about everything from grades to food to exercise habits to cleanliness habits.
So this question I get almost daily. If you gave up 50% of the fights in normal times, then give up 80% of the fights in these times. It is not going to forecast the rest of your relationship or your child's development. This is a moment in which we are all just trying to get on the plane and get off the plane. I'll end with this, Jason. When your kids are young, and especially when I had Emmett, when we traveled, the goal was get to the destination and get home from the destination, and all bets were off. That meant that there were M&Ms for breakfast. That meant that there was, playing games at 4 a.m. And it gave us a freedom to be really messy. And what I tell parents now is the goal is to get on the plane and get off the plane. So all these markers, this is not the moment. This is not the moment to set a list. I mean, if it's normally 50% goal, then go to 80%, right? Just drop it down. If the goal, and like I said at the beginning, I always ask myself one question with Emmett my whole life is he safe? And when he didn't brush his teeth one day or 2 days or 3 days, he was still safe. So I always kept my eye on the one question, is he safe? And if the answer to that is yes, then everything else can go by the wayside. And I just want to end with one thing too. Emmett was considered one of the most severe cases when we were raising him. And I'm so proud to say that his journey has led him to be applying to some of the best schools in the country. And that's not the achievement. The achievement is that he's going to go to one of them, and I'm talking the best schools in the country, and he's going to thrive. And he's going to know how to live on his own and keep himself safe and make friends. That's the achievement. It's not the school. It's not the name of the school. It's that he knows how to live on his own. And this is with the knowledge that 10 years ago, people told us that he would never live on his own. And this was never even something to consider. And what I found more than anything is I had to slow down, whatever it meant. If kids go to college at 18, maybe he goes to college at 25, right? Everything had to slow down. And so in these moments of pandemic, I would say, slow down, slow down, slow down. Take the, you know, what do they say? The heel off the gas, and give yourself a break, give your child a break, and do a lot more embracing, a lot more hugging, and a lot less achievement.
So that's another one for the toolbox. I'm also glad that we started and ended with Emmett. I think that's that, you know, brings so much humanness to this talk today. Sherre, I cannot thank you anymore. This is like the fastest hour I've ever spent. You know, helping us bring a proper perspective in these challenging times. And also making this very easy on me. So I have to thank you personally for that.
Thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure.
I hope we can have you back to talk with us further someday soon, really. These certainly are challenging times, and we all look forward to the day when all students are back learning on their school campuses, and we can go back about our lives as closely as possible to what it was like prior to March 2020. At the Help Group, we endeavor to provide quality services to our students and their families, and to impart what we have learned to parents, other schools, and other communities. If you would like to learn more about our schools and programs, you may go to our website at www.thehelpgroup.org. You may email our admissions department at admissions@thehelpgroup.org, or you can even give us a call at 877-943-5747. We would love for you to join us on December 9th for our next webinar titled Building Social Skills in Kids of All Abilities, which we'll be presenting in partnership with LA Parent Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.